You probably didn't click on this video by accident. Something in your life has been quiet lately. Not peaceful, not spacious, but the kind of quiet that makes you look around and think, okay, something's off, because you've felt this shift before, haven't you? There was a time, maybe a few months ago, maybe a few years, when everything in your life seemed to line up with a strange kind of precision. Opportunities fell into place. People showed up at the perfect moment. You kept seeing signs you couldn't explain, and even if you didn't say it out loud, you knew something is guiding this. And then, without warning, that flow just stopped. No more alignment, no more signs, no more momentum pulling you forward, just silence. A kind of emotional static where life used to feel alive and responsive. And if you're honest, that silence feels more unsettling than any chaos you've ever lived through. Because chaos means movement. Silence means something deeper. A conversation between you and reality has gone missing. Let me say that again, because this is the part most people never realize. Reality is always speaking to you, but at some point, you stopped speaking back. And the moment that happens, the moment you turn away from something you were meant to face, the entire structure of your life shifts. Not because you're being punished, not because you lost your chance, but because the quantum field, the creative fabric of your reality, can't support a timeline you're no longer participating in. This is why the silence feels so heavy. It's not emptiness. It's feedback. It's the space where your next version was supposed to land. But you drifted a few degrees away from the path that was building itself for you. And maybe you don't know when that drift happened. Maybe it wasn't dramatic. Maybe it was something tiny. A decision you postponed, a truth you swallowed, a feeling you ignored, a moment when you knew exactly what life was asking of you. And you whispered, "Not yet." You didn't mean to break anything, but on the quantum level, where your choices rearrange probabilities, even a small act of avoidance sends a very clear message. I'm not ready to hold this reality. And the field responds accordingly. It withdraws. It waits. It goes still. That stillness is where you're standing right now. Maybe you've tried to rationalize it. Life is just busy. Things will pick up again. Maybe I imagined the signs. But deep down you can feel the truth vibrating under the surface. Something was building. And you stepped away from the very frequency that was carrying it. Not because you're weak, not because you're unworthy, but because no one ever taught you what that silence actually means. No one told you that momentum in the quantum field isn't guaranteed, that timing is real, that ignoring the subtle guidance, the pull, the nudge, the knowing, doesn't just delay your path. Sometimes it dissolves it, and that's why you found this moment, this exact second, this message. Not to scare you, not to shame you, but to bring you back into the conversation you drifted out of. Because whether you realize it or not, you are standing at a threshold. A fork between the timeline that was forming for you and the timeline that will take its place if you don't reconnect now. And let me be blunt, not dramatic, just honest. If you ignore this moment, the silence won't just continue. It will become your new normal. But if you lean in, if you choose to listen again, the field will respond faster than you remember it ever could. Because that's how reality works at the level beneath thought and logic. It reorganizes the moment you do. So before we go deeper, before we break down the mechanics, before we explore why your timeline dimmed and how to reignite it, take a breath. Not a casual one. A breath that signals to life itself, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm ready to hear what I missed. Because part 2 begins the moment you decide to re-enter the conversation that your future self has been trying to continue without you. You've been taught your whole life that reality is solid, predictable, linear. But that's not how consciousness experiences it. And that's definitely not how the quantum field communicates with you. Reality doesn't speak in sentences, it speaks in patterns, in timing. In the strange way a thought appears in your mind 3 times in a single day, and you pretend it means nothing. It speaks in the tension you feel in your chest before you make a choice you know is wrong for you. It speaks in the sudden ease that washes over you when you finally move towards something you've been avoiding. The field speaks constantly. Most people just weren't taught how to listen. Let's start with the basics, the 4 channels the quantum field uses to reach you. And as you hear them, notice which ones have already been showing up in your life. 1. The first channel, synchronicity and timing. You know those moments when something aligns so perfectly that it almost scares you? The right person messages you out of nowhere. The opportunity you needed shows up the same week you contemplated giving up. You open a book and land on the exact sentence that answers a question you never told anyone. Most people smile at those moments, say, "Wow, that's funny," and then treat them like cosmic entertainment. But synchronicity is not entertainment, it's direction. It's the quantum field placing a breadcrumb on your path. It's the universe saying, "So this way, keep going, you're close." And every time you dismiss a synchronicity as coincidence, you break the very bridge that was forming beneath your feet. 2. The second channel, emotional intelligence, but not the kind you learned. There are moments when your emotions spike. Fear that feels exaggerated, excitement that feels out of proportion, grief that hits you before anything has even happened. You think you're overreacting. You think something is wrong with you. But what if nothing is wrong? What if your emotional system is picking up information the mind hasn't decoded yet? Fear doesn't always mean danger. Sometimes it means you're approaching a life-changing threshold. Excitement isn't always hopefulness. Sometimes it's your timeline vibrating faster than your identity can keep up with. Your emotions are not random chemical storms. They're quantum data, the earliest signals that a new version of you is trying to come online. 3. The third channel, physical sensation. Most people assume the body is slow, dense, limited. But the body is the most honest instrument you have. It feels the shift before the mind interprets it. It senses coherence before you understand it. It contracts when you lie to yourself. It opens when you're aligned. That heaviness you feel around a certain person, not a mood, information. That feeling of lightness when you think about a move you're not ready for. Not fantasy, direction. Your body is not betraying you, it's guiding you, you're just more used to overriding it. 4. The fourth channel, repeating patterns. If something keeps repeating in your life, a type of relationship, a type of failure, a type of opportunity that always dissolves the same way, that's not bad luck, it's a message. A repeating pattern is the field saying you're not seeing something. Let me show you again. Patterns don't repeat to punish you. They repeat to reveal you. And when you finally understand the message, the pattern doesn't just stop, your entire timeline reorganizes. So why don't people hear any of this? Because you've been trained since childhood to trust only what is loud, obvious, logical, socially acceptable. Nobody told you that the quantum field speaks softly, that your intuition whispers long before your mind shouts, that the earliest messages arrive as subtlety. And you've gotten so used to the noise of survival, of comparison, of busyness, that subtlety feels foreign to you. But here's the truth. Reality never stops speaking, you just drifted out of range. And the silence you feel now, it isn't silence at all. It's the field waiting for you to recalibrate your attention. Let's go deeper. Close your eyes for a moment, not to meditate, not to escape, just to check in. When was the last time you felt a nudge you didn't follow, a curiosity you shut down, a truth your body felt but your mind argued with, a coincidence you brushed off because you didn't want what it implied? Those weren't random moments, those were messages, actual communication. Every sign you ignored created a small shift, barely noticeable at first, but eventually those tiny detours add up, 1 degree off, then 2, then 5, until one day you wake up and think, why doesn't anything feel like it used to? It's not because life abandoned you, it's because you abandoned a conversation you never realized you were having. But here's the beautiful part, and the reason this video found you exactly now. The field never closes the door. It simply waits for your return. One choice, one moment of attention, one act of honesty, and the signal comes rushing back. This is what part 3 will reveal. The 3 ways you unknowingly mute the field, and the single shift that turns the volume back on. Before we go there, take one breath, a real one, because the language of the field is about to get louder. And this time, you're finally going to hear it. By the time someone feels the silence you've been feeling, the signal rarely dies suddenly. It fades, slowly, quietly, almost politely. Like a friend who keeps calling, then eventually stops. Not because they stopped caring, but because they realized you weren't picking up. And the quantum field works the exact same way. Not with punishment, not with anger, but with precision. When you drift out of coherence, the field recalibrates instantly, because it can only support the timeline you're actively participating in. And most people don't lose the signal dramatically. No. They lose it through 3 tiny behaviors that feel so normal, so reasonable. They don't even notice the price they're paying. Let's walk through them, slowly, honestly, because one of these is the way your timeline got interrupted. 1. The first break. Ignoring what you already know. This is the most common one, and the easiest to disguise as being rational. You get a nudge. A clear moment of knowing, a direction that makes no sense logically but feels right in a way logic can't touch. And then the mind steps in. Not yet. Let me think about it. I need more time. This isn't practical. Maybe later. But the quantum field doesn't speak in maybe. It speaks in windows, moments, frequency alignment. And when the window opens, you either walk through it, or it closes, not as punishment, not forever. Just because the timeline you were on can't stay suspended while you gather courage you already have. Ignoring the message doesn't feel like breaking a cycle. It feels like buying time. But on the quantum level, a delayed yes is experienced as a no. and the field adjusts instantly. 2. The second break. Trying to control what was never meant to be controlled. This one shows up when things finally start going right. Momentum builds, signs increase, the timing feels perfect, opportunities begin to click into place. And instead of staying in the same receptive awareness that created the momentum, ego wakes up. It says, "Oh, this is happening. Let me manage it, let me shape it, let me take over from here." But ego doesn't know how to operate in the quantum field. It only knows past experience, fear, and strategy. So when ego grabs the wheel, it shifts your frequency out of coherence and into control. Suddenly, the path that felt light starts to feel heavy. Synchronicities slow down. Clarity becomes fog. The next step feels forced, not because the universe changed its mind, but because your internal state changed its signal. Control is a form of interference. It's static. It breaks the conversation mid-sentence. And here's the hard truth. When ego forces, the field withdraws. When ego relaxes, the field returns. Every single time. 3. The third break. Self-sabotaging the moment you get close. This one is the most heartbreaking because it doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from fear. Fear of becoming someone you've never been. Fear of holding a life you're not sure you deserve. Fear of success turning into responsibility you don't think you can maintain. Fear of losing the familiar version of yourself. So right when the timeline is about to crystallize, right when the field is preparing the final alignment, you flinch. You start a fight. You ghost an opportunity. You delay a decision until the window passes. You distract yourself with something that doesn't matter. You make chaos because chaos feels safer than actual change. You don't sabotage because you're broken. You sabotage because your nervous system has spent years being calibrated to the frequency of your past. And stepping into a higher version of yourself feels like stepping into thin air. It feels too open, too exposed, too honest. So you shrink back, not because the new you isn't real, but because you haven't metabolized the identity that belongs to it. Self-sabotage is not failure, it's fear dressed up as protection. But protection isn't what you think. The field doesn't need you to be fearless, it needs you to be available. It needs you to stay long enough in the discomfort for the identity shift to take place. Because coherence builds slowly, until suddenly you become someone who naturally holds what you used to be terrified of. Let's pause. Take a breath right here. Because one of these 3 breaks is the reason your timeline dissolved. Maybe you ignored the nudge. Maybe you tried to control the process. Maybe you pulled away right at the threshold. And here's the part most people never realize. You don't lose your timeline because you're wrong. You lose it because you didn't stay conscious long enough to embody it. Momentum doesn't collapse through failure. It collapses through unconsciousness. And the moment you slip into automatic behavior, the moment you let your old identity make the decision, the new timeline can't stay stable. It's like trying to tune a radio station while your hand keeps shaking. The signal isn't gone. You're just not holding the frequency. But the fact that you are here right now listening to these words means the field hasn't given up on you. It's trying to show you the exact place where coherence broke so that you can rebuild the signal. Not from scratch, but with awareness you didn't have before. Because part 4 is where everything shifts. It's where you learn the actual mechanics of a quantum conversation. how reality calls, how you're meant to respond, and why the most powerful transformations happen not when you try harder, but when you finally understand the rhythm your life has been speaking in all along. Are you ready? Because once you hear this next part, you won't be able to unhear it. There's something most people never learn, not in school, not from their parents, not even from the self-help world. Reality doesn't manifest in a straight line. It manifests in a rhythm, a dialogue, a 4-stage conversation between you and the field. Everything you've ever created, everything that ever flowed or fell apart, followed the exact same structure. You just didn't know the choreography, so let's break it open. And as you hear this, don't think about it as theory. Think about it as a mirror, because this is the rhythm your life has always been moving in, even when you didn't realize you were dancing. Stage 1. The call, when life reaches for you. First, a call isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It doesn't come with sirens or neon signs. It comes as a quiet knowing, a recurring thought, an idea you can't seem to shake. A person who appears out of nowhere and feels strangely familiar. A chance that feels too aligned to be random. The call always begins internally before anything external shifts. It sounds like, I don't know why, but I feel like I'm supposed to do this. Or this keeps coming back for a reason. But here's the catch. Every call will challenge your current identity. Every call asks, are you willing to become the person this timeline requires? That's why the call feels both exciting and terrifying. It's the first vibration of a future self knocking on your inner door. Most people sense it, and then wait for more proof. But the field doesn't give proof. The call is the proof. Because if the field has reached you, it means the timeline already exists, and it's waiting for your next move. Stage 2. The response, your part in the conversation. This is where most people break the cycle without realizing it. The response is always small, almost annoyingly small. A message you're meant to send, a step you're meant to take, a decision you've been postponing. A truth you need to admit, at least to yourself. And here's the thing. The response isn't about accomplishing anything. It's about signaling alignment. The field doesn't need you to run, hustle, or leap. It just needs to know you're awake, receptive, participating. A single action, even tiny, tells the field, I hear you. I'm here. I'm stepping in. That one shift activates momentum you couldn't create by force. But if you hesitate, if you wait for certainty, if you let fear make the decision, the timeline loses coherence. Not because you failed, but because you didn't answer the call that was already in motion. Think about it like someone speaking to you and you looking away. The conversation can't continue. Stage 3. The recalibration. The part no one warns you about. This is the phase where people panic, because once you respond, the field immediately reshuffles your life to match the new frequency. Old relationships feel strange. Old environments feel too heavy. Old habits start to itch. Things that used to feel fine suddenly feel unbearable. It's not dysfunction. It's not something going wrong. It's recalibration. The field is clearing space, rearranging timelines, closing doors you would have dragged out too long, and aligning you with the version of yourself who can hold the future you said yes to. This is where resistance shows up. This is where people retreat into comfort. This is where self-doubt gets loud. Because recalibration looks like loss, but it's actually preparation. You can't take old frequency into a new timeline. Something always has to drop, and something always replaces it. If you don't understand this stage, you'll think your life is falling apart. If you do understand it, you'll realize this isn't chaos. This is confirmation. Stage 4. The upgrade. When your future self lands in your present body, most people believe manifestation happens when the outcome arrives. That's not true. Manifestation happens the moment you become the person who can sustain the outcome. The upgrade is internal before it is external. Your confidence shifts. Your boundaries strengthen. Your intuition gets louder. Your decisions get cleaner. Your energy feels different. You feel like yourself, but a version of yourself you've been trying to reach for years. And then, almost as an afterthought, the physical pieces fall into place. Opportunities appear, people enter your life, money flows, solutions show up, ideas click. Not because you forced them, but because your frequency became a match for receiving them. The upgrade isn't about what you get, it's about who you become. And once you cross that threshold, the old timeline cannot hold you anymore. You've outgrown it, completely, quietly, irreversibly. Now here's the part that changes everything. You don't start the dance. Life does. You don't push the timeline. You respond to it. Your job isn't to manufacture alignment. It's to recognize it. And when you understand this 4-stage rhythm, something powerful happens. You stop trying to force a future and start participating in a field that's already building it with you. Because the truth is, you were never meant to chase your timeline. You were meant to join it. And part 5 will show you exactly where your personal timeline is stuck, what stage you abandoned, what signal you ignored, and how to re-enter the conversation that your future self has been trying to continue without you. Take a breath. You're about to see your life with new eyes. By now, something inside you is awake. Not fully, not completely, but enough. Enough to notice the subtle pull behind these words. Enough to recognize the faint hum of a truth you've been avoiding. Enough to realize this isn't just a video. This is a mirror, because we're about to walk into the most personal part of this entire journey. Not the theory, not the mechanics, not the cosmic metaphors. Your story, the timeline you abandoned, the conversation you stepped out of, the call you answered halfway, the moment you drifted without realizing you were drifting. Let's take this slowly. You're not here to judge yourself. You're here to see yourself. And there's a difference. Step 1. Rewind your life to the last time you felt aligned. Close your eyes for a moment, or at least soften your focus. Think back to the last period in your life when things felt alive. Maybe not perfect, maybe not ideal, but aligned. Aligned in that strange, unmistakable way where you met the right people at the right time. Ideas flowed easily. Your intuition was louder than your doubt. You felt guided even if you couldn't explain it. Your life had a pulse. Got it? Hold that moment, that version of you, that frequency, because that was the last time you were in full conversation with the field. Now ask yourself quietly, when did it fade? Not when life got busy, not when circumstances got heavy, not when you got tired. When did you pull away? There's always a moment, small, subtle, unassuming, but that moment changed everything. Step 2. Identify the pattern you keep repeating. Every timeline that collapses teaches you something. But it teaches you by repeating the same pattern until you finally see it. So let's look at your patterns. Gently, honestly. There are three universal arenas where timelines get stuck. 1. Purpose or work. You feel the pull toward something bigger, a project, a direction, a calling, and right before it becomes real, you freeze. You procrastinate. You lose confidence. You get too busy. You wait for clarity to arrive before you move, but clarity was waiting for you to move. 2. Relationships. You meet someone who activates you, not just romantically but energetically. Someone who pulls you toward a more expanded version of yourself. And instead of leaning in, you retreat. Or you attract the same type of person again and again. Someone who mirrors your unresolved wounds, your insecurities, your fear of being seen. You're not cursed. You're repeating a frequency. 3. Identity. This one is the quietest and the hardest to notice. You feel yourself growing, changing, outgrowing versions of you that no longer fit. But instead of stepping into the new identity, you cling to the old one. The one that's familiar, the one that feels safe, the one other people expect you to be. And so your timeline stays tied to a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. When identity and intention separate, the field goes silent. Not because it's gone, because it's waiting for you to catch up to the self you're becoming. Step 3. The exact moment you broke coherence. Let's get even clearer. Timelines don't collapse randomly. They collapse at very specific moments, always one of these three. 1. The action you avoided. There was something you were meant to do. You knew it. You felt it. You probably even planned to do it, and then you hesitated. You told yourself later. You convinced yourself it wasn't urgent, or you waited for the fear to go away first. But fear doesn't go away before the moment. It dissolves because of the moment. Avoiding that single action shifted your frequency just enough for the timeline to lose stability. 2. The conversation. You postponed. You needed to say something. To someone. Maybe something honest, maybe something hard, maybe something that would have changed the trajectory of that relationship. But you didn't want conflict, or vulnerability, or the possibility of loss. So you stayed silent, and silence says more to the field than speech ever could. Your lack of communication communicated everything. 3. The letting go. You refused. This might be the one that landed for you. Holding on to something that's already complete, a phase of life, a job, a person, a belief, a story about who you think you are. The field can't pour new reality into hands that are still gripping the old one. Letting go isn't a loss, it's a frequency shift, and when you refuse that shift, the timeline stalls. Not because you're wrong, but because you're divided. Divided people can't sustain coherent timelines. Step 4. So what is your stuck timeline? Let me ask you directly, what were you building before everything went quiet? Not what you were hoping for. Not what you were manifesting. What were you actually in motion with? Something was forming, something real, something that had momentum. A relationship, a creative calling, a move, a version of yourself you were finally ready to embody. What was it? Say it in your mind, or whisper it out loud, because the moment you name it, you reconnect the thread you thought you lost. Now ask yourself, where did I step out of the conversation? Was it hesitation? Was it fear? Was it avoidance? Was it trying too hard to predict the outcome? Was it clinging to something you'd outgrown? Whatever your answer is, that is the exact doorway back in. Timelines don't return through force. They return through honesty, and you can't fix what you never name. Step 5. The insight your future self wants you to see. Here's the part you need to hear most. You didn't ruin anything. You didn't miss your destiny. You didn't fail. Timelines don't disappear. They pause. They wait. They hover in the field until you're coherent enough to rejoin them. Your future self hasn't given up on you. They're standing on the other side of this silence, holding the pieces of the life you were building. The field isn't withholding, it's inviting. And the moment you understand what your pattern is, where you avoided the call, which part of your identity stayed behind, you unlock something powerful. The ability to re-enter your timeline intentionally instead of accidentally stumbling into it. And that's what Part 6 is about. The exact method, unpractical, energetic, undeniable, to rebuild coherence in the next 48 to 72 hours. Not in theory, not in hope, in practice. Because the field is listening again. Your signal is strengthening. And you're much closer to re-entering your path than you think. Up to this point, you've understood what happened. You've seen where you drifted. You've recognized the part of yourself that went quiet. You've begun hearing the field again. But now we reach the moment that actually changes your life. Recommitment. Not in the motivational sense, not in the try harder sense, not in the New Year's resolution sense. Recommitment in the quantum sense, a recalibration, a frequency shift. A conscious re-entry into the timeline you stepped away from. And the truth is this. Timelines don't come back because you want them. They come back because you match them. And matching isn't about effort. It's about coherence. So here's the ritual. 5 steps. Simple but not small. Gentle but not passive. If you do these within the next 48 to 72 hours, the field will respond. Not metaphorically, energetically, tangibly. Let's begin. Step 1. Name the timeline you abandoned. This is the doorway. The moment your silence becomes awareness, take a pen or your notes app or whisper it if you need to. Name the thing you were building before everything went quiet. Not the fantasy, the actual timeline, the person you wanted to become, the project you stopped halfway, the relationship you felt but didn't explore, the move you kept researching at 2 a.m., the version of yourself you almost stepped into. Write it, say it, acknowledge it, because when you name it, the field hears you again. This is you saying, I remember, I'm still here, I didn't give up, I just got scared. The field always responds to honesty. Step 2. Admit the exact place where you disconnected. This is the hardest part for most people. Not because it's painful, but because it's vulnerable. Ask yourself gently, what was the moment I stepped out of the conversation? Was it an action you avoided? A conversation you postponed? A truth you didn't want to admit? A leap that felt too exposing? A letting go you refused because you weren't ready to grieve? Pinpoint it. Your ego will want to say it to us, it was complicated, or it wasn't my fault. But don't let it. Be specific. Be precise. The field doesn't need you to apologize. It needs you to recognize the signal you ignored. Because recognition is coherence, and coherence is everything. Step 3. Ask the field. What is my next right step? Not, what should I do with my life? How will this turn out? When will things change? Those questions belong to fear. Ask the question that belongs to alignment. What is the next right step? And don't overthink how the answer comes. It might appear as a sudden clarity, a quiet thought, a feeling, a memory. a person you think about out of nowhere, an uncomfortable truth you've been avoiding, or something so simple it almost feels disappointing. But the field speaks in small steps because small steps stabilize frequency. You don't need a 5-year plan. You need one coherent movement, just one. And the moment the answer appears, even faintly, trust it, because the field does not waste its signals. Step 4. Take that step within 48 hours before ego reboots. This is the quantum threshold. If you wait too long, ego comes back online. It starts negotiating, doubting, editing, rationalizing, protecting. That's why the window is 48 to 72 hours. It's the period where your consciousness is still open, still receptive, still in direct contact with the field. And the step you take does not have to be big. Send the message, make the call, start the project, apply for the thing, schedule the conversation, tell the truth, finish the task you've been resisting. Release what you know is done. Do something small, but something real. Because the field doesn't respond to perfection, it responds to momentum. Movement is the language of commitment. Every coherent timeline begins with one act of courage that didn't look like courage at all. Step 5. Watch for the shift. It will be immediate. The field responds quickly when you respond clearly, sometimes within hours, sometimes within minutes. The shift may show up as a synchronicity, a sudden lightness in your chest, a sense of finally, a person reaching out, unexpected clarity, a dissolved resistance you carried for months, a new opportunity that makes sense in hindsight, a direction that becomes obvious. A next step that appears without force. You're not forcing reality anymore. You're back in conversation with it. And the field always answers a coherent signal, always. Now here's the most important part. You don't have to rebuild the entire timeline today. You just have to show the field that you can hold a consistent signal again, that you're listening, that you're willing, that you're back. Because coherence isn't about intensity, it's about sincerity. You don't need perfect confidence. You don't need to eliminate fear. You don't need to be fully healed or fully ready. You just need to be available. When you take that step, when you reconnect honestly, the timeline resumes its construction. You'll feel it. Your body will recognize it. Your intuition will wake up. Your environment will shift. Your future self will move closer. This next version of your life was never gone. It was waiting for you to return to the frequency that belongs to it. And in part 7, the final piece, you'll understand what happens after the signal returns and how to keep it alive so you never drift into silence again. Are you ready? Because the final step is the most important one of all. If you've made it this far, something inside you has already shifted, not dramatically, not explosively, but unmistakably. A subtle warmth, a clarity you can't quite explain, a sense that you're finally back in the room, back in your own life, back in the frequency you've been missing. What you may not realize yet is this. The silence you felt for so long wasn't abandonment. It was alignment waiting for you to return. The universe isn't punishing you. The field isn't withholding from you. Your future self hasn't walked away. They were all standing at the doorway, holding the thread of your timeline, waiting for the moment you decided to pick it back up. And now you have. So here's what comes next. The part no one explains, the part most people miss, the part that determines whether your timeline stabilizes or slips into quiet again. You must keep listening, even after the noise of your old life comes back. Because it will. Old habits will try to reclaim you. Old fears will whisper their familiar lines. Old identities will try to pull you into versions of yourself that were never built to hold the life you're walking into. That's normal. It's not a setback. It's not a sign you're doing it wrong. It's simply your past checking whether you're still available. Your only job is to answer gently, "I'm not that version anymore." Because coherence is not a single moment. It's a choice repeated, a frequency maintained, a conversation you keep returning to even when the world gets loud again. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to fight for your new timeline. You only have to stay awake in it. The field does the rest. It will guide you. It will open the next door. It will remove what no longer fits. It will bring in what you couldn't have planned. It will rearrange people, opportunities, ideas, timing, all in service of the frequency you're finally choosing. All you have to do is remain honest with yourself. Honest when something feels off. Honest when a door is closing. Honest when a new one is opening. Honest when fear tries to negotiate you back into smallness. Honest when your body says yes even if your mind trembles. Because the moment you stop being honest with yourself is the moment the signal fades again. Not out of punishment, out of resonance. Your life can only build around the you that is true. So take this in. You're not behind. You're not late. You're not broken. You are re-entering your timeline right on time. You are reconnecting with the future that never gave up on you. You are remembering how to hear the field again. You are stepping into a conversation that was paused, not ended. And if this entire journey has awakened something in you, even just a spark, declare it out loud or quietly or in the comments if that feels right. Say, "I'm listening now." Because that single sentence carries the full weight of coherence. That single sentence tells the field you've returned. That single sentence can restart a destiny that has been waiting longer than you know. You're not ignoring yourself anymore. You're not ignoring life anymore. And life, finally, is ready to speak back.